Welcome to our first edition of Smoke Signals. I'm Matt Montgomery, along with head football coach and athletic director Chris Tabor. The Fighting Indians kicked off the 2014 season last week in grand style with a huge win over the Pine Tree Pirates. Coach, congratulations. It's a great way to start the season. Not only do you start it at home, but my goodness, you put up 62 points, and you got to really feel good about the win. What are your overall thoughts?
Well, we're excited. We're coming off a 10-game losing streak, 12-game losing streak over the last two seasons. We haven't started the season off 1-0 since I first got here with Carthage. So, that 1-0 is big right now for us and our kids.
You told me last spring when you were doing the spring ball, and which resulted in you just having the one scrimmage before the last week's first game, that you're going to be able to run the ball this year. And you knew early on that was going to be the case. And boy, you really did it well Friday night. I think 350-some-odd yards rushing on the ground, over 500 yards of offense, and you weren't kidding. You guys just have a lot of running backs, and y'all just kept pounding them.
Well, that's what people think. It's our running backs, but it's really our O-line, and that's what's really come on for us in the last, 6 to 8 months is we finally found, the five guys, the right guys up front to make it happen, and we do. We have a special core running backs. We've got, five that can do it for us, and overall, I was pleased. We still got a lot of work to do, but we're headed in the right direction.
Yeah, the offensive line last year really struggled, and you did move some people around. You moved Ambrosen out from center, and you did some other things like that. And the size is another issue. I've heard several people say, wow, we're a lot bigger this year. And, of course, you have the sophomore Searcy up. He's 310 pounds. I know that size is not always the big part of high school football offensive lines, but in this case, being able to get off the ball, it really showed against Pine Tree, you guys just really blowing them off the ball.
I think the biggest thing is the unity of it. We have two sophomores starting up front with Derek Searcy and Justin Crow at the guard. So we have two seniors at tackles that have been really helping them out. And what you really see is they care about each other and they play together, and the communication is there this year. And that's what we kind of lacked last year, is just the communication of knowing what to do every play. And they've been playing together for about 6 weeks now, so they're starting to figure each other out a little bit, and it's been a huge blessing for us.
Yeah, I don't have to tell you that takeaways has been a huge issue in the last 2 or 3 years. I think it's minus 28 is what our statistician told us in the last 3 years total. And, boy, you really came out on the positive end the other night. Started off early, you got the fumble recovery. But the key thing is that you converted that into a touchdown.
Yeah, and that's what we've talked about. Anytime we have a short field, we've got to get points, whether it's a field goal or a touchdown. We've got to put points on the board and make people chase us. And I thought we did a good job of that. The defense gave up some big plays, but they also made some big plays. I think we were +4 in the turnovers the other night. And 3 of those resulted in either short yardage for us to have to convert, or we actually ran one back for a touchdown and got points off of it. So that takes a lot of pressure off the offense when the defense is getting the ball for us on their side of the field. And like you said, us converting and getting points on the board kind of separated us from Pine Tree early and made them have to kind of get out of what they wanted to do.
It looked like defensively that the kids were in position. Of course, new defensive coordinator DJ Wright came in, and you really didn't have to change the scheme that much. It's a more aggressive defense, it feels like, this year. Is that his style, or do you think that's the experience of some of the guys that maybe played last year coming back?
It's his style, but it's also kind of fits the style of the kids we have on defense now. We're not very big, but we're very fast and we're physical. And what we saw the other night that we got to get better at is we got to get better at tackling when we're first to the football. We were flying around and hitting people, but we weren't making that initial contact tackle. Mm-hmm. And, they were slipping off of the first and second guy and getting those extra 6 to 7 yards. That's what we've got to get better at.
Of course, the Ward kid for Pine Tree, he was a snaky, slippery guy. He's as good a running back as I've seen in a while. And it did seem like your kids were at the point of contact. They just didn't wrap up and bring him down.
Yeah, and that was a big thing. The running back was very good for Pine Tree, and the quarterback was very good for Pine Tree.
Sure.
The quarterback was a lot bigger than we thought he was. Mm-hmm. He kind of reminded us of a Mahomes kid from last year.
Yeah.
He's a little bit thicker in the waist and the legs, and he was hard to bring down. So, Pine Tree had a great scheme. I thought offensively they were probably a little bit more ahead than they were defensively, and that kind of showed throughout the game. But if we can solidify the tackling and not give up the deep ball, we saw that a couple times the other night again with our youth in the back end, I think we're going to be okay.
I was a little surprised. I guess I have this feeling of Lake Travis, where Coach Collins came from, that they were just going to be throwing the ball all over the place, but they basically ran the ball. Now, they had some success throwing the ball, but it seemed like they relied on the run more, and I know that's what you try to do with your offense, is strike that balance, which you didn't have that last year, but it sure showed that the other night it was a very, very balanced offense, maybe a little bit tilted more toward the run run.
Yeah, and and I've kind of followed Malzahn and had an opportunity to go to Auburn a couple years and visit with Malzahn, and Chad Morris is a product of Malzahn, which Coach Collins is kind of familiar with at Lake Travis, and it's all kind of the same stuff. It was almost a mirrored offense the other night. We were running some of the same plays, some of the same formation sets. But it's like you said, you're trying to run the ball to establish the passing game, a lot of play action off of it. And the big thing is execution. And I thought they did a really good job of executing their game plan against us. And then again, we didn't do a very good job of tackling. We could have got a couple more 3-and-outs if we'd have just made the tackles at the initial contact.
This is your third year in Jacksonville, and it looked to me like the other night was sort of like the culmination, or like it was like this is the offense that you've been wanting to run. The balance, being able to run the ball, but throw if you have to. Last year it seemed like you just didn't have the running game, and you had to throw all the time. A lot of pressure on Carter McCowan. Man, the other night he just engineered it and ran it effectively, and you ran the ball when you needed to.
Yeah, and I think it's like we talked about a couple weeks ago. It's the third year in the program. Kids starting to understand what we want to be and who we want to be, and we saw a little bit of that the other night. A lot of pressure was off of Carter. And the same thing I asked him to do before we walked on the field. I said, run the offense. Do what is necessary to run the offense. You don't have to do any extra this year. You got the running backs, you got the O-line, you got the receivers, and you saw his stats were better. He was only 8 for 13, only threw the ball 13 times, but he threw for 160 yards and 3 touchdowns. And when was the last time we had a game we didn't have a turnover?
Yeah.
Where he didn't have to force the ball in there to make something happen, or a running back, losing on the ground. So, overall, I was pleased. I thought the kids did an unbelievable job of substituting. We stayed fresh throughout the 4 quarters. We were joking about this morning. It almost looked like we had personnel packages in the first half because we had so many kids running in and out. And it was really just the depth showing that we now possess, and it helps us, kind of keep our legs under us throughout the whole game.
I was impressed with the poise that the players that did not have the varsity experience showed the other night. Some of them, they were a little bit probably nervous before the game, but when the game started, they just looked like they just fit right into with the veterans that have been playing on the varsity for 2 or 3 years, like Braylon and some of those guys. And that was, I think, a credit to the coaching staff because the kids looked prepared. They looked really ready to play.
Yeah, and I heard that from a couple people. That's a compliment to us and the kids, that the kids looked like they knew exactly what to do, and they did. And that was what was so much fun about it is I'm sure they were nervous. I mean, we had a bunch of butterflies because we had a lot of young kids on the field, but we try to take that away from them by tempo and going a little bit faster where they don't have time to think about it. They don't have time to look across and see how big the kid is across from them. So, you look out there and you got Mike Edwards and Christian Edwards and you got, Jacoby Robinson and Ezel Woods, and you got all these sophomores and juniors out there. I was very pleased at how they handled themselves.
I mean, and Jeremy McAnally, his first varsity catch for a touchdown, he hasn't played since the 8th grade. Man, he looked like a veteran out there.
Yeah,
some of them, the routes were well run.
Yeah, and that's the deal. They know what to do, and we talk about it every week, and it's just execution and being consistent. And I felt like that's why we were able to put up the points we put up, because the kids did what they were supposed to do every play.
49 points in the first half. I mean, it's been a long time since that has been the case. And, we scored 62 points for the whole game, and people say, well, that's the highest points since the Nacogdoches game, which I don't count because that was so fluky, that over 14, over 12 overtimes or whatever it was. I mean, you can't argue with the number of points, I think, reflecting what you guys want to do, and that's play fast, play up tempo.
Yeah, and that's the deal. We punted 2 times the other night, which, that was when we really kind of slowed down because we were trying to run some clock. So, excuse me. Just the tempo of it, the execution of it, the mentality in the red zone was a big thing that I saw our kids. You kind of saw the light switch go on. Is when we got inside the 20-yard line, they wanted to score a touchdown. I mean, Jadarius Blake the other night is not taking one offensive rep with us in practice and catches a touchdown on a play action. So, that's the big thing. At least he knows what to do.
Right.
We walked through it. He knew exactly where to be, and we executed it. So that's what we got to continue to do.
Things to work on. I had a chance to visit with Coach Wright, the defensive coordinator, at the half, and of course he wasn't pleased with the tackling, and he said, I was excited because you had 49 points, and he's on the defensive side saying, no, I'm not happy.
Yeah.
Talk about some of the things defensively that you and your staff talked about over the weekend that you're going to have to improve on defensively, besides tackling.
The big thing is reading our keys. I felt like our kids, the pace of the game was going so quickly that I felt like some of our younger kids got off of their read keys. They weren't reading their tackles, or they weren't reading their guards, and they were getting their eyes in the backfield, and it was hurting us. They were able to execute some of their pass or deep passing game on us because we weren't reading the receivers and playing our 2-to-1s and doing the stuff we were supposed to do and staying over the top, and we gave us some big plays. The other thing that I really wasn't pleased in was our special teams. We talk about how important that is, and it's something we got to fix this morning is effort on the special teams. We got enough kids now that you're not playing every special teams, but when you're on the field, we got to get 100% effort, and we didn't see that. They had a bunch of kick returns back to about the 35 or 40. Early on, it didn't seem like because they fumbled the first 2 kickoff returns.
Yeah, what's the deal with that? We talked about that on the radio. It seems like when a guy fumbles the kickoff, he always seems to get a big gain out of it. Are the players overrunning the coverage in their lanes? Is that what it is?
I've been doing this a while, and anytime the ball hits the ground, everybody wants to go to the ball. And they get out of their lanes. And what your coach do is stay in your lanes until you get to that 15, 10-yard cushion on that return and then start closing down. When the ball hits the ground, it's almost like a free-for-all. Everybody's going for the ball.
They get out of their lanes.
Next thing you know, he gets loose on you. So that's something we're going to fix this morning. But we've got to win the special teams battle. I didn't feel like we did that the other night.
Well, the Fighting Indians get the win 62-37 over Pine Tree. A great start to the season. And Coach, arch rival Palestine comes in this weekend. And, of course, they had a rough outing last week. Got beat 38-7 by Van. New head coach over there, former Jacksonville Fighting Indian, by the way, Jay Brown, has taken over that program. Talk about Palestine and some of the things that you guys are going to be working on this week to get ready for them.
Well, I think their big threat is their quarterback. Very athletic. He's a 3-year starter.
G. Clark.
Clark kid. He's a special kid. They've always got size and speed over there. And it's like I talked to the paper this morning. They're still trying to find their identity. With a new coach. Jay Brown has them well coached over there. And I think the big thing for us is kind of like the Pine Tree game is getting on them early and making them chase us and try to get them out of their comfort zone and what they're trying to do and make them do something they haven't worked on a bunch. So it's going to be a good game. When Palestine comes to town, it's always going to be a battle. And, we just got to get ready to go. What
does Palestine do offensively? I mean, I know you mentioned G. Clark, the quarterback. He can do a lot of things, but what is their scheme? What's their package?
They do a little bit of everything. I mean, you'll see them in the pro eye and twins, and then they'll be in spread. So, there's a lot of work for our kids to be able to recognize formations, recognize, tendencies out of those formations. But they're going to show you a bunch of 2-back gun, some pro under center, 2x2, 3x1. I mean, they're going to mix it up a bunch, so we've got to make sure we can get lined up and read our keys and attack the football.
Defensively, I know Palestine's kind of struggling in a couple of their scrimmages, and, of course, last week they gave up 38 points, and that's probably a new scheme, too. I mean, their defensive coordinator left there and came here, DJ Wright. We mentioned that a moment ago. Talk about what they do defensively that you think you can attack.
Well, they're going to base out of a split, so they're going to be an even front like we saw last week, which is good for us. Not a lot of new teaching and scheming for the front line, but they're going to see a little bit more man because they are a little bit more athletic than Pine Tree and a little bit man-free. So, we got to be able to take our shots when we can and run the football. I think that's going to be the key to it again.
Last year Palestine had 4 or 5 Division I kids. Does anybody else stand out to you that you can think of that after watching film that Jacksonville's going to have to prepare for besides G. Clark, the quarterback?
Their 2 defensive tackles are good. They're big, physical kids that can get off the ball. So, that's going to be a challenge for us early, especially wanting to run the footballs, be able to block them and get them where we want them. So, and they run around well. I mean, Palestine always has athletes over there. So, they're fast and they can get to the ball. And the big thing is being able to establish the line of scrimmage early. And I think if we can do that, we'll be okay.
So you got another home game this week before you hit the road the following week to Mount Pleasant. Then you get the bye. So, early on, Coach, I mean, after that last season, I mean, it's kind of nice to be able to play at Tomato Bowl and get that first win. And does it feel like the pressure's off? Not necessarily the coaching staff, but the kids. Because I could see after the game, the post-game celebration that the kids had, it wasn't like over the top. They didn't just go crazy or nothing. But you could just sense that confidence level come up.
I think that's the key word. I don't think it's pressure. I think it's confidence. I think it's our kids walking in and expecting to win a game when they step on the field and being prepared to win a game. And it's like you said, they were excited the other night, but it didn't look like we won the state championship. I mean, it was a win, and it was a great win for us, but they knew that after Friday night we had to get ready for the next week. So, a lot of it right now is just, worrying about us and not really worrying about Palestine or Mount Pleasant or Ennis or whoever's coming down the road. It's us and taking care of what we're doing. And our kids are starting to believe that. If we can do what we're supposed to do and worry about us, I think everything will fall into place for us.
Just before we talk about the keys to the game, Coach, I just want to ask you, District 16 5A had a tremendous week. Only 2 teams lost, and the teams they lost to were pretty good. So, boy, I mean, it just shows you how strong this district is. I saw where John Tyler's moved up to number 2 in the polls. Lufkin moved up. White House got some votes in there. So I know district is down the road, but I think it's good for the kids maybe to see some of the talent that they're going to have to prepare for in these non-district games. That's what makes them so important.
Yeah, I mean, our district's the toughest one in the state, and it's going to be a challenge week in and week out. But, the more confidence we can get and the better we can get at executing what we're trying to do here going into it, I think we'll be fine, and we'll see.
Coach, keys to the game to get the win against Palestine this week at Tomato Bowl?
I think it's basically the same thing. We've got to tackle better. We got to continue to run the rock. And then, special teams are going to be key this week again. I think that, although we had short fields on some fumbles and recoveries and stuff like that, I think special teams needs to create those opportunities. And if we can do that, I think we'll be okay. Well,
it's Jacksonville versus Palestine and that geographical rivalry of Highway 79. Kickoff will be at 7:30. We'll be on the air in KWRW starting at 7 o'clock. For head coach Chris Tabor, I'm Matt Montgomery. We'll see you next time right here on Smoke City.